Hello, welcome to Power Pantaloons podcast. My name is Tanya. I'm your holistic cancer wellness specialist. And today we have Cristina Lindsay with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. I want you to share your story. I think the power of healing is in sharing of stories.
Yes, yes. So, my cancer story. Let's see. My cancer story is when I was 46 years old, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And it was just a really crazy time in my life. I had my mom with Alzheimer's was living with me. I had my third grandchild on the way. I had my own business. I was kind of, going in a bunch of directions at once. And it took me totally by surprise. I had always been super healthy and, ate organic and I did all the right things. So this kind of threw me way off track and on track, which is really interesting because up until then, I had been working my entire life. Everything was about work. I had started working when I was 15. I was on my own at 17. I was a single parent for a decade. I had my own business. So I knew that part, right? I was like, go, go, go. And I was just living on caffeine and all those stress hormones that my body could pump out. And truthfully, like from the outside, I was rocking it. I had gotten married when my daughter was 10 and we had this beautiful little farm, picture perfect on the outside, right? It's like this farm with the horses and that, all of this beautiful stuff. But the truth was, we were completely stressed out. I was completely exhausted. And cancer kind of gave me this pause, right? It was like okay, I'm it's kind of a forced shutdown, right? Cancer's like, I'm shutting this operation down for a while. And a friend of mine had asked me right around that time, "Well, how can I support you? What makes you happy?" She asked me that question, what makes Cris happy? And I was like, happy? Like, what the heck is that? I had no idea how to answer that question. I knew how to work hard. I knew how to succeed. I knew fulfillment and discipline and patience and all of those things. But I found myself completely unable to answer a question that should just roll off the tip of my tongue, right? So I decided that if I was going to be down, me and my goal setting, that I would start exploring happiness and what that meant to me. And I started reading books and writing journals and all of this stuff. So cancer has given me a lot of gifts, but that was probably the greatest gift. And I always say cancer is my most challenging gift because it was a turning point. It was like, I'm sure like so many people that have gone through this, you have those aha moments and you start to realize what's important in your life. And what I came out on the other side was that I wanted to be happy. I want to enjoy my life and be happy, regardless of having cancer, regardless of the outcome of cancer, if it comes back, if I survive it, if I don't. I only have today. And happiness is what I learned along that journey. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot. When I tell people that I'm grateful that I had my cancer journey, they look at me like I'm absolutely batshit. Um, but I agree with you. It is a pause. It makes you reevaluate everything. And before I had cancer, I was kind of self-centered and a little bit selfish and kind of just absorbed in my own thing. And cancer taught me to be grateful for every moment that I have. And I have become a kinder, gentler, a more empathic person because of my journey. So I totally understand that.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that so many people, if they're open to looking at the lessons, and that's hard, right? If when you're going through treatment and you feel like crap and you're struggling on lots of different levels. It's some there are days that that's hard to lean into, and maybe on those days the best thing you can get to is neutral, right?
Yeah,
Or just like, okay, I can be grateful that this day is over. Like that could be as far as you can get, and that's okay because that's leaning into that, that gratitude, and I think that's really powerful.
absolutely. And there were days that was it, right? I am grateful that I'm done with this day because it was not pleasant.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, tell me a little bit about like what your treatment plan was. Like what did the oncologist advise for you? What did you do? What didn't you do?
Yeah, yeah. So it was stage 3 breast cancer, invasive ductal carcinoma. So I ended up having a mastectomy on one side, just one, not bilateral, and had to do chemo. And I think I did chemo and radiation. So adriamycin, which we all love, and Taxol, and I can't remember the third one. Isn't that a great thing that I can't remember that? But I had a really hard time with chemo. Actually, my very first treatment landed me in the hospital for 4 days, and they decided that my body could not take that amount. So they had to slow it down. So ultimately, chemo ended up being about 6 months of chemo, and then radiation after that. But I remember in that moment saying, I'm not doing this again. One treatment and I'm in the hospital, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm, gonna just take my chances. And of course they all rush in and they're like, you won't survive. So I have a great oncologist, this beautiful Indian man who starts everything with bad news with the term, with the conversation of, okay, sweetie, so here's the deal, so he's always trying to soften this, and he's like, you really need to do it. So he's like, I'll find a way to make it work for you. And he did. So
That's awesome.
yeah, but it was rough. It was a little, we all know that's rough. It's rough.
Chemo is no joke.
Yeah, it is no joke.
It is a brutal battle every day.
Yeah.
My chemotherapy was cisplatin, and I had to be inpatient for 4 days because in order to give me the cisplatin, they had to give me rescue drugs, and I had never heard of that. Rescue drugs soften? I don't know exactly, but so what they were giving me was so poisonous they had to counteract it before, during, and after me receiving it. And because that took more than 12 hours, I had to stay inpatient.
Mhm.
Um, so we did that 4 days a month,
Oh,
6 months.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's brutal. Yeah, it's definitely rough. And the thing that strikes me is just the bravery it takes. It takes a lot of courage to go to do that. Like, I mean, I know, I'm sure that you probably felt the same way going into the hospital every time you had to do it. Same time I had to walk down the hallway to that infusion room, having to just tell myself, you know, you can do this, you're just going to walk right in and you're just going to get it done and you're going to do it. And I was terrified every time, every time.
I see. I had a different experience. I don't think. I mean, now I know it was brave, but like while I was going through it, I didn't see it as bravery. I saw it as a necessary thing to live, to continue to breathe, that this is what's required of me. And now that I've been through it, like, good holy moly, I would never want to do it again, right? And I talk to people who are like, "Oh, this is my third time having cancer." And I'm like, "How the ever love?" Like, after being through that, think
Mm.
I don't know if I have the reserve to do it again. Obviously, I would fight, right? But like
Right.
it's such a hard thing, both mentally and physically,
Yes.
that the older you get, the less the less easy that nonsense is. It just it's so you can say that you understand, but you don't until you have walked part of that journey. And it's not that you're not compassionate or understanding or wanting to be helpful. You just have no idea
Yeah.
what it is unless you actually walk that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's it's the physical part of it where sensations and feelings and side effects that I think that you could only experience with chemo, like weird things that happen that you
Talk
don't
about that.
like.
Talk
Yeah.
about some of that. Like, because
Yeah.
I think it's important because the doctors, they give you a laundry list on a piece of paper. It's this small. You can't read it.
Yeah.
They don't actually talk about it. Like, so I think helping others by talking about the weird
Yeah.
stuff that happens. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What were
Yeah.
some of
So
your weird things?
I remember getting the list and there was 387 things on the list. Possible side effects of and I was like 387. Wow. Yeah, one of the things I had with one of my chemo drugs that every day at like 11 a.m., my arms from my elbows down would go numb for like, I don't know, maybe like 2 hours, and then it went away. Like, it
Weird.
was just so strange. I was like, "What is happening?" But it was like while I was on that drug, and I think it was Taxol, I can't remember. While I was on that drug, that's what happened, and it was like, that is the weirdest thing. And like you said, they give you about a million things to counteract your body to, from reacting. I don't know, that one, that one was all mine, I think.
That is a strange one. I have not heard that before, but you know.
Yeah, yeah, it was very strange. And just that feeling, I don't, and probably a lot of it too, steroids, they give you a ton of steroids, but just that feeling like, neuropathies, your skin tingling, your hands, your feet, just random neuropathy. Thankfully, knock on wood, it didn't stay with me. I know a lot of people that, that stayed with them.
Still have it. Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah. And like you said, going through it, I can't imagine going through this more than once. And of course we would if we had to, but um, it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah. Are you willing to talk about see with me while I after, you know, I was having issues and a friend of mine said of course you're upset. The thing that defines your femininity tried to murder you. So that's going to take some time to work through.
Mhm.
Did you experience any kind of dysmorphia or
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I had well, I should have added this in the beginning. I had an abdominal tram flap reconstruction. So what that means is I didn't want an implant at 46 years old, and so they used some fat from my stomach and part of my abdominal muscle to use my own tissue. Now, I was like, oh, well, that sounds good, right? I'll be healthy. I'll use my own tissue. My body won't. But that turned out to be just kind of a mess. And it actually everything was looking, I had to go in to have a few things adjusted, and everything was looking pretty good. I was like, okay, that's okay, until radiation. And then radiation, totally changed the look of the breast and the feel of the tissue and all the skin around it. I don't know that it's really bothered me that much. It's just it's just kind of like, okay, I'm just done with all of that. I just kind of stepped away, and I'm not sure how healthy that is, just to kind of, it's almost like disassociation, right? It's like,
Yeah.
boobs, what boobs, you know?
I yeah, like I've told my husband, I said if I ping anywhere, if they if I have any kind of breast stuff going on, both of them are going. There will be no questions. They'll be
Yeah,
like they're just going. I'm not going to subject myself to
yeah,
any of that. And I know that sounds real radical, but you know, with cancer being a genetic thing and it does run in my family,
yeah,
clearly, right? Like
yeah,
I, so to make that kind, like it's a hard decision to make, but like I've
yeah,
already made it, and like I haven't been presented with this, but I've already decided that I'm not going to put myself in that kind of situation where
right. Right. And honestly, looking back, I regret my decision. I then when they and I don't know if they do it differently now, but then they didn't do that sentinel node biopsy until when you were in surgery. So you had already made your choices. Had I known I had cancer in 10 lymph nodes, I would have made a completely different
different.
choice. I would have done a double mastectomy with no reconstruction. Um, I'm just, yeah. But you don't know. And you go in and you kind of get on this fast moving train, and they're like sending you here and they're sending you there, and you're trying to make the best decisions, and they make it sound like, oh yeah, you'll get through this, it'll be 6 weeks of recovery. Well, that abdominal tram flap was 2 years of recovery, and I still have pain, 13 years later. So that was no joke, and I would have done that totally different had I known what I know now.
Which is why it's important for us to have these conversations so that other people can have this kind of resource and have some kind of understanding of what they're walking into as a patient instead of just what, yes, you should trust what your doctor, because if you don't trust your doctor, you're screwed, right? Like, so you should trust the oncologist that you select. Um, you are allowed to fire doctors. You are allowed to find the one that you want to work with and all of that. Like that's a whole different conversation. But
Yeah,
being able to hear perspectives from people who've already walked the walk
yeah,
is super important, which is why I do this.
yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And yeah, it's funny because I actually interviewed two different oncologists. And they both were recommending the same exact regimen. But I went with the one I went with because we connected. I needed to have somebody I felt I could talk to. I mean, really talk to. And we just, our first meeting, we talked for an hour. And and he had told me, he's like, this is a physical journey, but it's also an emotional and a spiritual journey. And so he was asking me, what do you lean on for those things? Like, do you have a good support system? Do you have, you know beliefs and that type of thing? And I immediately, that was resonated with me. Now that might not resonate with somebody else, and that's fine, but I definitely suggest this person that you're going to be with for this whole journey and beyond. It's very important that you can talk openly and frankly with, because he's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, they might be part of your life for years.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
should absolutely have complete faith in them and be able to have frank conversations with them and feel like they actually care about you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's funny because the first guy I went to, of course, is very nice, and I'm sure he's very, he's fine as an oncologist, very, had all the right credentials and all of that stuff, but there wasn't that resonance.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really needed. So,
Yes.
yeah,
So how did you find out that you had cancer? Was it through a mammo? Was it through examinations? Was it a freak
Yeah. Yeah,
doctor appointment?
I had just had a mammogram about a month before I found a lump. So I had the mammogram, everything was fine. I've been having mammograms since I was 25 because my mom had breast cancer, though my cancer was not genetic. I didn't have the BRCA stuff. So kind of, I find that kind of weird because she was the same age when she got it, same breast side and all of that. But anyway, um, yeah, so I found the lump myself. I was taking a shower and I felt it and I'm like, "Oh, what the heck is that?" And so I went back to my, at that point, gynecologist who was ordering my mammograms. She's like, "Oh, that's weird. You know, you were just here and that came back clear. Why don't you go get an ultrasound and see maybe it's just a cyst or something?" So I was thinking, it's nothing.
Right.
Yeah, so I go get the ultrasound and the radiologist pulls me in his office and it's like, you need to get a biopsy of this like right away. And so it was found on an ultrasound. So I found it originally and then they saw it on the ultrasound. So then I went to the surgeon, again thinking this is nothing. And the surgeon's doing the biopsy and she says to me right then and there, "I'm 99% sure this is cancer." And I was just so like, wait, what did you just
What?
say? This is like, I remember I went out to the parking lot and I called my husband. I'm like, "I think she just told me I have cancer." And we were like, "What?" So it turns out after the MRI, I had two tumors. So that mammogram never showed anything. So ultrasound showed one, MRI showed two, and when they did the surgery, there was three.
I, from what I understand, mammograms are not actually that uh good at finding cancer. I don't have the statistics on that. It's just what I've heard. I need to do more research on it, but there are other testings that are better at finding cancer. So I don't understand why we're still doing mammograms, but that's, I guess a rant
Yeah,
for a different day.
yeah,
I'm
yeah. I
I'm
know.
glad you found it. Like that's just
Yeah. Well, and the mammograms now, since then, this was before they do 3D mammograms. So now they do 3D, and I think that those are better. But they said, if you have that really dense tissue, that really fibrous tissue, and I've not met one woman that doesn't say that, like, don't we all? That I,
yeah, right? Like I don't like isn't that
yeah,
everybody?
yeah. Yeah, so
I'm
now they do the
confused by that.
3D and they do an ultrasound every time and then an MRI once a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually have to fight for the MRI, but
With your medical history though, it shouldn't be that.
no, shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, insurance companies are a whole
Yeah,
different ball of wax, aren't they?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whole different thing.
Bet you've gotten to be good at writing appeal letters.
Well, my oncologist is the one that ends up fighting for it, which is again, how awesome is that?
Yeah,
He's like, we're gonna get this done. So
yeah.
he,
I,
yeah,
I was real fortunate with my insurance company when I went through my journey. I was so paranoid after my journey. I had a pap smear every 2 months for the first year. First, it was the gynecologist who found it. Then there was the oncologist that was my main oncologist, and then there was the radiation oncologist, and everybody got a look, right? Like, so, ridiculous, right? Like,
yeah.
and
No,
and
I
after
totally get that.
and after a year, my oncologist, he's like, look, he's like, I appreciate that you're hyper vigilant, but this is absolutely unnecessary. Can we tone it back? I'm like, fine.
Right.
Everybody gets to do it once a year now. So we did that for a year, and 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 then
Yeah.
I relaxed. But I was not relaxed for the first several years. And
Yeah.
the
I mean,
first
I think that's pretty normal, right? I mean, I felt the same way. Like any little thing that showed up, I was like, oh my gosh, now I have bone cancer, I have this cancer or that cancer. Um,
and for like 10 years, every time I had an appointment, I would have panic attacks, and
yeah,
I would make people drive me to my appointments because I just couldn't like, and that finally relaxed after 10 years, right? Like,
yeah,
even though they say after 5 years you're back into the normal populace, but I mean, that's a shitty number. One in every two people is gonna have like, so now I'm back in the one and two. Like that,
right.
can I
Yeah,
opt out? I had two kinds of cancer. Am I done? Like,
yeah.
I should be done. I
You
shouldn't have to
check the
do any
box
of this
right up
again.
front.
Like, they took the whole uterus out. It was 10 pounds.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
A
Yeah.
healthy uterus is 4 ounces. When they took mine
Wow.
out, it was over 10 pounds.
And
So a bowling ball, like the size of my head.
that is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
there
I think
was,
it's really normal to have those fears.
of course.
Um, really normal. I remember going in, it was probably, I don't know, maybe a year or so post treatment. And I got this rash on my face and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And they sent me to an allergist. And this allergist looked at me and said, I think that's leukemia rash. You need to call your oncologist. And that
God.
freaked me out because one of my chemo drugs, that was one of the possible side effects. It could cause leukemia, right? Your chemo drug can cause cancer.
Oh my God.
So I called and, certainly that it wasn't that. And he was just livid. But I mean, that sent me into a tailspin. Every little thing sends you just into a tailspin. It's like your nervous system has to settle down again. It's a trauma response, really.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
Like, you have PTSD because of a disease. Absolutely.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
what was it, like 7 years ago? I think it was about 7 years ago. One of my mammals popped with a abnormality, and
Mm,
I kind of lost my poop.
yeah.
And my gynecologist at the time, and she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna give you this oncologist to go see. Once you make your appointment, call
Mm,
me, and then I'll call her to make the appointment sooner. Because, as you know, if you don't have cancer, you cannot see an oncologist. They don't have time for you. They just
right.
do not have time for you. They'll schedule you out a year later. Like, they just do not have time for you." And then she says to me, she goes, "Okay, so what are we going to do to make it so that you don't have stress and anxiety until you have this appointment? Like, so how can I support you? Like, do you want Xanax?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Okay, so I know that you meditate and you do stuff like that and breath work." And then she goes to me, she goes, "Have you heard of the goddess Durga?" And I thought it was really cool that she was incorporating, not not trying to force me to take
Right.
medicine, but actually connected with me enough to understand that I was spiritual and that I would be open to something like that. And it was beautiful, and it was super helpful because then I had another goddess to go research and look at and explore.
I love
Um,
that.
I yeah, and so what ended up happening is it was just a lymph node. Um, the oncologist pulled out the image, and she's like, "That's a lymph node." Like, she looked at it less than 10 seconds, right? Like, you're done. Like, but I had to investigate it because of my history, and yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. And I love that she tuned into that. My oncologist was the same. So I went to him, can't remember what I was it was something, I was like, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't whatever. And he knew I wasn't big on taking a lot of medicine. And so he pulls out his prescription pad, and my response is I rolled my eyes. I was like, ah, you know, and he writes on this pad and he hands it to me, and it says meditate.
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
oh, this is why I love this man.
Uh,
Yeah,
did you
because
do any alternative wellness modalities in addition to what your oncologist was telling you to do?
I did stuff to support my body in between treatments, because I never wanted that new Lasta or Neupogen shot, because that gave me big side effects. But so I was doing like detox stuff, those foot bath things that you can do to detox. I was doing those in between. I was trying to drink smoothies and green drinks as much as I could get in, just to kind of support my body through
Yeah.
that process. So that type of stuff, definitely meditation, prayer, meditation, a lot of journaling,
Yeah.
um, that type of stuff. But yeah, nothing like no Chinese medicine. I did that later. I did do acupuncture in between. That was really helpful, very helpful,
Yeah.
especially with the nausea and sleep.
Yeah. Well, that's another conversation, right? So the side effects to the drugs that you were on, like, did you have problems eating and sleeping?
Yes, 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 and yes, yes. And then they give you the drugs for that. So one of them was he gave me for sleep was gabapentin. I don't know if you ever took that. I had her. I He calls me the side effect queen. I had a react. He's like, this drug has been around forever. Like no one has a problem. Of course, I have a
Of
problem.
course you
My
do.
eyeballs start going from side to side. And so I call him. I'm like, my eyeballs are. Stop taking that medication. Um, the nausea drugs never really helped me enormously. Uh, Medical marijuana helped me better than anything for nausea, and for anxiety. It just like
I
calmed down,
agree.
and my stomach immediately calmed down. It was like such a relief. It was like, oh, thank God. Because I mean, I had a pharmacy of things I could take, but they weren't working. They did not work as well as that. So
Yeah. Peppermint and ginger tea,
yeah, ginger tea, yeah,
super helpful. Super helpful for me.
licorice tea.
If you like licorice, yeah.
Yeah, I do though. I'm like, it's one of those things, right? You like it or you don't. I love
Right. Like the Mexican one that everybody either likes it or it tastes like soap.
it.
I
I don't
I can't think of it right now.
know. That's a two.
Cilantro.
Oh,
Cilantro.
cilantro. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I liked cilantro until stink. I don't know if you ever experienced stink bugs. When in the East Coast, we had a big stink bug thing, and they smell like cilantro. So that ruined me.
Say,
Yes.
I don't get close enough to them. The cats eat them before I get a chance.
Right. Yeah, we had a year, I don't know when it was, but it turned me. But yeah, so, definitely anything you can do to support yourself in between, that aligns with who you are and what works for you, uh, is helpful.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you another personal question and you can tell me to mind my business if you don't want to answer
I
it.
don't,
Did you have any kind of sexual dysfunction because of your treatment?
you know what? Not so much because of treatment, but treatment brought on menopause at 46. And I wasn't expecting all that. So yeah, that the side effects of that, because that was pretty intense. Um, and yeah, that kind of played into the whole sex life thing. Wasn't as great at a younger age. Then, of course, that's probably pretty normal when you're up in your late 50s and 60s, but not at 46. So yeah, that was challenging.
Yep. I was 38 when I went into menopause
Yeah,
because of the
you know,
hysterectomy. Yeah. So like, yeah, it's definitely something, and they don't really discuss that with you in advance. And it's
no,
like, hello, you maybe you should have told me that this could be a problem.
right. And you can't take anything, hormonal, or you can't take anything phytoestrogen, or you can't take,
No, no, you can't. And you have to figure it out, right? Like, I
oh
have been, knock on wood, really fortunate. I never had hot flashes. Like a
gosh.
lot of traditional menopausal issues I didn't have. I
Yeah.
guess that was the trade-off for having a hysterectomy at 38. But like I never endured a lot of that. Or I don't
Oh,
remember anything being, at so out of whack. Um, but yeah, there was no hormones or any of that that I could take. And now, the pleasures of not having as much estrogen in my body. Now I have a beard, and like things
right. Right. Yeah. 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 Oh, hot flashes. You're blessed. I've had over a decade of hot flashes, and
oh God.
yeah, and in the beginning they were so bad. Like my I would turn just beet red and my whole body would break out in a sweat. It was brutal. It was brutal. But they're not as bad now, but I still have them occasionally.
Mm,
Like, I'm like, really?
mm.
What did I do in another life? I don't understand what my karma is happening right now.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't answer that for you. That's not what I specialize in this time around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But I hear that. So we were talking earlier a little bit about happiness,
Yeah.
and I want to hear how you're supporting yourself with that, and how you're supporting other survivors. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, happiness is what I learned through the journey. A strange, strange gift. And so now that's kind of what I'm dedicating my life to. I've got a company called Be You Live Happy, and I teach and support women who are either have or had cancer, because a lot of people get stuck in that, right? They get stuck in fear, and they get that becomes their identity, that they have cancer is just part of their life. It wasn't like cancer was just an experience that I had in my life. It's so I help them, that those women that are struggling with anxiety and depression and negative thoughts and feelings, and teach them ways to find more peace and positivity and live a happy life.
That's
So I
beautiful.
programs that do that, and I work with different oncologists and different hospital systems and support groups, and then do like online stuff as well, online programs, and many of them are free. I understand, I get the challenges of finances while you're going through that, and I do have a program called Pay It Forward, because I've hit in my own life so many times where, as a single mom and being out on my own young, I was really poor. And the very services that I needed that could have helped me, a coach or a program, I could not afford. So I have a program called Pay It Forward, and it's, pay me what you can. And the only ask is that you use your skills and your talents in life to help someone else, um, in return. So I have those services offered as well. So yeah, I
Beautiful.
love what I do. I mean,
Yeah.
when I tell people I'm a happiness coach and trainer, I'm like, who wouldn't love that job? You're talking about
Right.
happiness.
Right. Yeah, helping people understand that they are not their diagnosis, that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful, because you can really get stuck in it,
Yeah,
because from the day you're diagnosed, and then you're, as you said earlier, on a train, and it's moving very fast,
yeah,
and you don't see the world around you. You
Right.
see your next appointment, your next treatment, your next blood work, your next inpatient stay,
Yeah. Like that.
your next, your next labs, your next imaging, your next step by step, your next, and you don't see everything around it. And then you sort of get stuck in that bubble and you can't even conceive a time where you can be a person that doesn't obsess about the fact that you have cancer. You can't see a point in your life where it isn't consumed by the fact that, yeah, like
Right.
when I was walking through it, like all I saw was cancer. And here, 16 years later, I can say that I've had days, weeks, and even months where I literally haven't remembered that I'm a survivor, that like I'm just living a normal life and
Yeah.
not wrapped up in my diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And to get from, point A to point B to get there is a little bit of a journey. And plus, how we're feeling during that process, I believe truly, I know by, through science, truly affects how we heal.
Yes.
All of those biochemicals of our thoughts and feelings flood our body with. Are we supporting our body, or are we depleting it even further through worrying and all of the, scary thoughts that we have? Not that we want to push those away. We want to do the opposite actually and lean into those a little bit and send them love and help the body to recover from this.
Yeah. Um, there was, I don't know if I've told you this yet, but every day there was only one thing on my to-do list. And that was when I was changing my ruse. I would put on it, I would visualize that when I was putting on my new underwear that they were Wonder Woman panties because Wonder Woman doesn't die. So that was a physical representation of me actively deciding to live every day.
Yes.
And I credit that with 95% of the reason that I survived my cancer battle because I I had a super aggressive, super rare
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I think that your mindset, and I'm sure when you did that, it probably brought a smile to your face, or, it's kind of a fun thing to do. And that seems like such a small thing, but it is not. It is huge because it just floods your body with all of those healing chemicals is what that does. Smiling alone does that. And to link
yes,
that to, like, these are my Wonder Woman panties, and I'm cool.
yes, back in the day, I called them my power pantaloons, right? Like they were always my power panties. They were always that. And which is where I got the name of the podcast from because it's the reason I'm still here. So
I love it. I
it
love
has to be the name, right?
it's so much more. I mean, isn't that such an empowering thing to do for yourself? You
Yes.
empowered yourself with that. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. All
Yeah.
right. So, how can people reach you?
And go to my website. It's BU Live Happy. So BU, like BEYOU, livehappy.com. And you'll find all my information there, and my email is there. If you want to reach out and say hi, that'd be great. And I'm on Facebook as well, Cristina Lindsay Coaching. I do have a private Facebook group for women with cancer, and you'll find that there as well.
Okay, I will make sure to put all of that in the show notes for everybody so that they can find you. I want to thank you so much for talking with me today, Cristina. I really appreciate it sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to connect and communicate about these things that so many people in our worlds don't understand. So it's
Yes.
nice to connect.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much.